Welcome to the Great Distraction.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back. This is The Great Distraction, and today the topic of discussion is life transitions. My name is Ben. With me today are my co-hosts Thomas,
How's it going?
Shane,
What's up?
and Trevor.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. The Great Distraction is a podcast that focuses on a vast and random range of topics, and we hope that each episode leaves you with, if nothing else, a little something to ponder. And as always, we would love to hear from you guys. Questions, comments, and topic suggestions are always welcome. You can contact us on Facebook or via email at greatdistractionpodcast@gmail.com. Yes, feels like it's been too long. And today we've got we've had Shane multiple times, and Trevor we've had before. If you've ever heard the episode on death, that's I forgot to write down what. Yeah, that's
Which one was that?
It's
I can't remember.
This is the death
Welcome,
guy.
Death, to
Welcome
the
back.
studio.
Yes.
Am
Yes.
I welcome back?
And today we'd like to welcome Death on the recording. It was actually a pretty cool episode, and it's something kind of a side. That's weird to say. It's kind of a side hobby of this guy. So we thought we'd bring him on. Now, anyway, so if you heard that one a while ago, it's been a long time since Trevor's been back on. He doesn't live near us, so it's hard to catch
In
him.
fact, I don't live at all. Death is eternal.
There you go. Hence why he did
Well
the Death
played,
episode.
sir.
I've been around a long time. Perhaps
just
you've
swing
heard the
around.
Stone song.
Da-dum-tsh. Okay, today, the topic. We thought we would take an opportunity to sit down and discuss major life transitions, hence the name, life transitions, and kind of our take on what we've been through and how it affected our lives. Now, unfortunately, not all of us have experienced some of the said transitions we're going to go through, but we have a sprinkling of these transitions from each of us, so we thought everybody could weigh in, and then obviously it'll open up general discussion and kind of along the lines of what all of us experience. So this topic should be pretty relatable to anybody of all age. And when I was kind of putting it together, we were thinking kind of the high school on, not to retirement, because unfortunately none of us are of the age to retire, though we're all hoping someday we'll be able to get to that point. But yeah, so kind of before that. So I would say maybe high school-ish to
The adult years.
Yeah, the adult years, exactly.
We're at least at stages of trying to retire, so we can.
Right.
Trying to be adults. So let's kick this off with one of the first I could think of when we major transition that we all go through at some point in our life, and that's moving out on your own, becoming responsible for yourself. Actually, I remember because Thomas has brought this up a few times. So you know what? I'm going to say, Thomas, I'm going to say you kick this off. Tell us about, because I know your situation was a little more unique than a lot of people's when you did go off on your own. So what was it like? What was that life transition like for you?
I mean, out of the house?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I got kicked out by my stepdad.
There you go. That's one
So
way to come to
So I
it.
didn't have a choice. I was 16, and I had no longer had a place to live, except my car. So that's how I started with it. And I got lucky. I had friends and stuff, but it was traumatic because I didn't feel like, I felt like my home was where my family was, even though it was just, us, like everybody's family, a little screwed up. That was still my home.
Yeah.
So to lose that feeling was a really, it was a harsh one to me, and even today, because it was like, that was a giant change for me, because everything I felt like I was safe with as a child and growing up and brothers and all, so it was like all of a sudden that just got pulled away.
Yeah, you're losing that whole support system,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And comfort zone.
Yeah, and I think those transitions too, if you're not a strong person that's willing to just understand that sometimes that's the way things happen, and the best thing you can do is react to life and make good, solid decisions on what you know will keep you safe and alive.
So how did you deal with all of the additional responsibility required to sustain oneself?
I didn't very well. I was 16.
Yeah, really. No,
Yeah,
16-year-olds typically don't make any good decisions. But
Well, I had a job, so I would go to work because I liked my job. It was a machine shop.
oh, nice.
And and it was cool. We hung out with welders and all these people and
That
everything.
is cool.
So so I had almost an adult life started at 16. So that helped a lot. And then just realizing that there is a structure of home. There's a living somewhere instead of turning into some ragged vagabond, for lack of a better term.
Savage.
Savage, But, I was stupid. I hung out with my friends, and they were cutting school, and I wasn't at work, so we can get drunk and be stupid. And, so it took a little bit of growing up. But my brother was the only steady family member I had, and he kind of grabbed me.
Oh, that's right. Because at 16, you were you a junior?
Yeah. Junior high school.
Jeez, so you weren't even out of high school.
No, actually, I was a sophomore. Because I was a year ahead. My birthday's an odd day. I was like the oldest person in my class all the time.
Holy crap, man! So you went 2.5 years in high school, out of the home.
Yeah.
Where'd you stay?
In my car. Yeah.
Wow.
It was wintertime in Indiana, too, so that really sucked. So I lived in a 66 Ford Fairlane for about 4 months, and then I bounced between friends' houses, and I stayed with friends a lot, you know. But it was a transition of trying to figure out what the hell. Oh, I never knew this existed. All this stuff outside of the house. I'm 16. I didn't know. You know, I don't know how to get an apartment. I don't know how to I knew how to get a job because I had one, but I didn't have any like real survival skills. You know, I just got lucky and knew people that were, nice to me.
Yeah. So you had a whole total culture shock on that one.
Yeah.
Didn't need to deal with all that stuff. Wow. So playing that out, into your adult life, I mean, I can think of some obvious ways that would have benefited you, but how do you feel that helped you in your adult life? Like how the benefits that you took from the lessons learned at that time, you still feel you carry with you, or get what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I think it really kind of structured me as an adult because I learned how to survive by these other people that were, I had a job, so I was with responsible people at least 8 hours a day, you know.
Yeah.
And I had a boss, I had to answer to, so I had to actually, do something on a regular basis, but that's all I had, and I was scared. I didn't really know what to do, so I knew if I went there, I was warm, I had something to do, I was eating, everything was taken care of, so I just worked. So I think I developed if I'm always working, everything's okay.
That's not a bad mentality. No wonder
'cause-
you work so much now.
Yeah,
Right.
I feel
Thomas,
like if
are things bad right now, buddy? Because
they're
you're always
always-
working hard.
hey, sink or swim.
So if you don't know us or know Thomas, he is a welder by profession on the artistic side of things. Do you feel that I want to ask something along the lines of how do you feel that you started off life so young, as a makeshift adult into welding? Do you feel that really heavily influenced where you went with your life and why you are where you are today as far as doing welding for work?
So absolutely, and I feel like I came from the generation of having an actual physical trade that you can do to
Yeah.
give the world could be the only thing that saves you.
Yeah.
And it has. Like me being able to
You
do
did
that.
come
as
from
a
that
trade-
time period,
I
too.
did come from that. And,
Totally.
And from knowing how to do that, I've always been able to have some sort of a job.
Got it.
Was
I mean,
that first job welding that you had?
No, it was janitor.
Oh,
Shut up in a machine shop?
Yeah.
You were nice.
Yeah. I was
What did you
16.
transition? Yeah,
Yeah.
really. They're not going to let
Yeah.
you do anything.
Like, hey, design this shuttle.
Yeah. Wow, the he's an idiot savant.
Right.
Goddamn savant. Give him some bread.
What did you move into after that?
I bounced around from friends' houses for.
No. I'm sorry, not where you live, like for
Oh, yeah.
work. How did you go from janitor to something?
Well, I just stayed there and I went to work every day.
Well, and they eventually gave you something more to do?
Yeah, I mean, once you develop a trust with somebody or
Yeah,
working with
like,
somebody, that,
realize
okay,
you're
we'll
not
do
a-
this. And so there was like a thing of oh, this is the lathe. You don't want to know how to run this? Yeah.
I see.
Well,
Okay.
clean it.
That's old school, too.
That's old school.
That's how it used to be.
Yeah.
I
So
like
once,
it.
so once I learned how to clean it really well, I learned how to turn it on and do something. with it.
Whenever I get a new machine, that's kind of the first one. Not necessarily clean it because I don't have to clean it. It's new, right? But the first thing I go through is calibration before I even turn the
Same
damn thing
kinda
on.
shit, yeah.
Sometimes you have to turn it on to calibrate, but a lot of times, no. You learn every damn bolt you can twist or gauge you can set so that you can get it calibrated, and then you know a lot about the machine, and then you can proceed to turn it on and hopefully use it more safely. Shane, let's talk about you. How did it progress for you? How old were you when you got out on your own?
that is a good question. So
He's still not.
so
out of it.
There-
no, that's true. I actually am still somewhat living at home right now. So
In your mom's basement?
no, it's a bedroom.
I love it.
But my whole period of my life was wonky as fuck. So I mean, to start off, my parents were divorced, so I from the get-go didn't have necessarily a home. I had a couple homes.
Yeah.
And so I would bounce back and forth.
Yep.
And then I was paying rent to stay home.
Yeah.
And because I had a job, it was like one of those things, you have a job, and so now they're expecting you to pay rent.
right.
And
Pull your weight.
eventually I lost that job, and I never liked the idea of paying rent to stay home.
Yeah.
So the moment I lost that job, I ended up just going to a friend's house and crashing on his floor with him for months. And then the next place I stayed at was again with my dad, and I was now paying rent with him, sharing a place. And then I went from there to renting a room for my grandparents, and then I went from there to getting married and buying a house.
Okay, dang.
Wow.
So
That's some slam shifting right there.
yeah, so it literally was just kind of like all over the place. And I think I bought my house at around 25 at the time.
Okay.
And I eventually lost that house, and again ended up kind of like sleeping in a car for a little while before I got into another place. So it's been rocky.
Let me ask you this. With respect to one's character building, hopping around so much for such a... Well, okay, first of all, how old... You said you were 25 when you bought the house. How old were you when you got married?
It was the same. So
Oh, it's
I
the
got
same.
married and bought the house. Yeah.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
When you buy a house together, you are married.
Strike
Yes.
two.
Correct. Yeah. So we bought the house first and
Yeah.
then got married within the year. But that was the plan. That was the plan the entire time.
So let me ask you this: as far as the character building of hopping around so much until you were 25 went, do you feel that led you to want to be married and buy a house, or like because it's funny, I've talked to some people about this topic or whatever, and sometimes they gain that sense of freedom with that type of lifestyle, hopping around and never kind of. Some people like to go with the flow and just live anywhere, everywhere, rent for a year here, move rent somewhere else. But you went and ended up trying to be more solid in that, and actually getting married and buying a house. That's commitment.
And we previously kind of talked a little bit before, but we talked about kind of pressures you feel from
societal
society.
pressures.
Yeah. So and
we'll get
so
to that.
now I mean I was dating somebody that I would have been perfectly happy to. So I didn't feel like I was pressured to marry her, but
Yeah.
you find yourself in this situation, and it's like, well, this is kind of that point in a person's life,
It's
and I
the
have the
natural
opportunity
step
to buy a
forward.
house. I mean, that's
Yeah.
cool, you know,
Yeah.
like
Especially
you get
so
out and you
young.
buy a house. So it seemed really normal, but yes, there was at least some feeling that at some point, when am I going to say, oh yeah, that's the line where I become an adult? You know?
Right.
Like,
Isn't that
where,
the
where
question?
is that going to be?
Man.
Is there one?
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
Actually, that's one of the questions we we're working towards here. Not that we
Is
have an
there a
answer,
line?
but is there an actual point when you're an adult? But
I don't know, man.
I feel like to me it's whatever you want it to be, but I feel like that the adult when you just have to really like, okay, now it's time to actually be serious is when other people depend on you. If you're on your own, I feel like there's
that's how I've always defined it. If I depend on nobody to be me in any way, shape, or form, I'm an adult. Whatever
So,
happens for you, if you
Here's
strike
the
it
weird
rich as a
thing,
kid
though.
or something.
So I've never had kids.
Yeah.
So technically, I have never made it there.
Wait, no. I didn't mean when other people depend on you.
I think
I
think
meant-
that's factual too.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah, no, it is.
I
It is
lo-
factual. So, I mean, nobody has necessarily ever depended on me.
No. I meant when you don't depend on anyone
Oh,
else
I
for
see.
your existence. That's when I considered myself an adult because like
yeah,
you, I don't
gotcha.
have kids. So, but then some people. That's an interesting point that you brought up now too, because
Yeah.
some people do define
Well-
adulthood when you can take care of a family, and it's
Right.
like what? So that means I'm never an adult because I don't have a
That's
family.
the point in your life, too, though, that now the pressure has gone up.
Oh,
and,
hell yeah.
And it makes it almost impossible to go back.
That is impossible to go back.
So,
you
I
can't
mean,
put them back in
can't-
the oven, dude.
Right. I mean, the kids are, until they're no longer, you're no longer need you,
Yeah.
that you're not responsible for them any longer.
Okay,
You're
well-
kind of stuck in that phase of your life.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you bail and then you become a piece of shit.
And
so.
let's pretend that there
Hey, man,
are no
everything's an
people like
opinion.
that, even
Yeah.
though we know otherwise.
Yeah,
right?
right.
So okay, before we advance on to that, Trevor, tell us about your story.
Mine's boring.
Well, it's okay.
I mean,
If
basically,
it's simple,
I
it's simple.
stayed
Mine's not
at
very
my
complex.
parents' house until I got sick of them.
Yeah.
And then an opportunity arose, and I moved in with two strangers that were friends of one of my friends.
Yep. How long did
And-
that take before you got sick of your parents? How old were you?
21. But
Yeah, you made it kind of far. Some people
I
are like
had an-
18 and they're out.
my mom, while she was dating my current stepfather, would stay with him. I'd see her once a week. So my brother and I, of high school age, had a house to ourselves.
Wow.
So we
Why
didn't have to
leave?
go find any trouble.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Got
Everything
it.
came to us.
You were the party house.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
And that was something that you could do in the 80s. My mom was like, I would rather you guys be here. Tom's
same
mom was
thing.
like it too.
Yeah.
I'd rather you guys be here and not go anyplace.
I know.
don't destroy my house.
Yeah, Thomas has said the same thing. That's how his mom was too. So it was just kind of cool. But
That era,
Yeah, but
parenting was done
when-
by actually paying attention.
yeah, and-
Yeah, so that all changed when they started expecting things like I never had to pay to stay there, but I needed to jump through their hoops.
absolutely, and live by their rules for say.
Their hoops weren't very well defined. It was kind of really like more like
Today I feel like
politics.
this one.
Really?
So you're fucking up and you don't even know it yet.
You're like,
you've already
you know
fucked
what?
up and you didn't know what you were supposed to do.
Right. You can't have hair like that. Well, I have a job, and my job says I can have hair like that. And you're like, I don't get it. So,
So
and
they
then I
create
bailed
rules
out. And basically, for, I don't know, most of my existence, I've had 2 or 3 roommates. We all split it, so it's not terrible, until I decided that to have our first child. And then I was like, well, now I got to ramp it up because I don't want to move around everywhere and have my kid have to, because that happened when I was younger. My mom they were divorced, so if my mom found a better deal, we moved. So yearly change in spots, and I was like, I didn't want to have that.
Yeah, that's rough. Dude.
Yeah,
Fucking whole
until I got a
family.
house, and then I was like, man, this is the first thing I should have done. Why didn't anybody tell me?
Yeah.
No one prepares you for shit.
That is true.
How can you
don't learn
How
that
can
in
there be a
school at all.
line of adulthood if there's no steps to get to adulthood?
Yeah.
And who
Or
decides
retirement.
those steps? or anything.
There
no
is
steps
a
to get
program that has steps.
12 of them.
12
Yeah.
of them.
You don't want to find
If you
yourself
do
in that,
that,
one.
then you're an adult. You have to go through that first. That's how you officially
Well,
know
you
you're
do
an
that,
adult.
you're and if you do that, you're sober. So I don't know. Is sobriety and adulthood that maybe has something to do with each other?
I don't think so. I mean, I guess lots of people in the 50s didn't think so.
Right?
Oh man. Yeah, I don't. My story is not very complex or crazy either.
He was born on Mars and he had a job in Pluto.
And I ended up on Earth, and here I am.
Flew here to spacecraft,
I went last.
adopted your human ways.
I ended up lasting a lot longer though. I didn't move out of my parents' house until I was 27, and I was paying rent. Wow.
But he was going to college full time.
Yeah, see,
Well-
that's a lot of difference.
Yeah, and I was paying rent at my parents' house from basically out of high school, all the way till I was 27. My whole plan was get
I
through
bet
college.
your mom loved that. Let me get you some food. Come on, let me feed you.
I wasn't really home a whole lot, but college.
Did you have a
hard.
job while you were in college?
Usually 3 jobs. And
Oh,
and
shit,
I never
man.
took less
So
than.
you're paying for yourself
So
to
you're
go to
jacking up
college.
the
You're living at home
unemployment.
and you're paying rent to live home.
Yeah, and I paid for the
hated
college
that.
too. Yeah,
Oh,
it was
God,
it
that's
was a lot, dude. Yeah, I never took less than like 16 units, and I had one semester up to 21. Holy crap! So it was no joke, dude. I lived at school, and so I wasn't even home to have problems with my family. It's like, and not
It's
that we.
amazing how work can keep you busy enough not to notice life itself.
So yeah, that's right. So I knew Thomas's. Plus, I enjoyed it, man. It was a unique experience for me. But I told my parents that I wasn't going to move out unless because they didn't mind me living there, and I was helping.
You
know,
mean
with-
barely living there?
Yeah, and I was.
wait a second.
Yeah, and I was
swinging
helping with
by
the
to give
rent,
him cash.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I was helping him out too. I think I don't know, for the last maybe 5-6 years I was there, I was paying like $600 a month rent. So I mean, I was really helping out.
And a
family
wad
with
of
that.
cash and a knot.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, yo, thank you. Dude.
Yeah, busted out the money clip like, how much you want?
I got you covered, pins.
And I told my
Buy
parents,
yourself something pretty.
don't spend all in one place. No, I just told them I didn't want to move out until I was sure I was not coming back.
Yeah.
And that's when I bought my house at 27, and then my brother went with me, and mom kind of had to deal with the empty nest syndrome because it was going from full
Man.
house to empty house because there
You
was
think
only
it's
2 of us.
crazy how much they push you out, and then when you're out, they're like, "Oh, you could come back and I'll make you dinner. I'll do
Yeah.
your laundry for you.
Yeah, now I feel bad.
Let me scratch your back."
Yeah, but usually about once a week, mom calls me. Okay, you guys gonna have dinner this week?
Yeah.
Is that Sunday? Come for dinner? Like, oh,
Basically,
yeah,
that's
sure.
like, I just want to be your mommy.
Yeah, that's sad, dude. That's a whole another topic. So not too exciting there, but I'd say one of the things I did take from that, because I kind of planned to learn that responsibility. It was interesting because I had never lived on my own. So going from living with your parents, and not that my mother was doing.
I don't think I've ever actually lived on my own. like me.
So
just
my
me.
my transition was from my brother. I've lived on my own for many years now, but my brother was with me, so at least I had somebody with me, right? But it was a huge transition because I didn't. I mean, I had always thought in the back of my head all the stuff I would have to do because I'm a list maker and a planner and all that stuff anyway.
No way.
But when you get out there and you've got a whole house to fill that has no furniture, it has
man,
no
it's
washcloths,
crazy.
no forks, no plates. I mean, I had nothing.
There
'cause I had nothing to
seriously, there
take.
needs to be a class for that or something, something that
Yeah.
you can do online.
It was brutal,
Because
man.
A friend that I went to high school with, he got a ride to IU in Bloomington, and he was calling me like, "How do you do laundry?" And I thought, isn't that an essential skill you should know before you leave your parents' house?
How do I clean this?
Yeah.
No, so I had all that kind of stuff figured out. It wasn't that bad, but yeah, it was just all the you don't really sit there and add up all the things to buy that you
No,
don't even
no
think
one
that you have
says
to
like
buy.
you're going to need forks and spoons and knives and
Yeah.
something to put them in.
Yeah.
A refrigerator, kind of
Oh, yeah.
important.
I had to
You
buy
want
all
food.
Yeah,
Most places come with a fridge.
and mine did no.
Not always, yeah.
Well, a lot of houses
always.
don't usually, but
Yeah,
like rentals do.
sometimes.
Some place you rent or whatever,
Oh,
they
yeah.
usually come with a fridge or whatnot.
Because a
but
lot
yeah.
of people want to pick the refrigerator, so they'll leave it out.
Yeah, and my place had like no appliances at all, so I had to buy everything. It was nuts.
Been moved in with a
Well, if
cooler.
you buy a house, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like when you buy a place, they don't
When
usually
you
come
rent,
with,
you're
yeah.
taken care of.
Yeah, yeah,
Everything's
yeah.
already there.
Yeah, yeah,
Not
exactly.
always, but
You're right, yeah.
usually because they want people to just be able to move in, and they expect that somebody who's renting doesn't have a fridge, and why would they want to own a fridge and carry it around with them? It just doesn't make sense.
Something huge to freaking
It's like really like keeping
move.
stuff cold. They carry it on.
Or they're like really attached to this like 1930s lead line model.
icebox, man. It's straight up
Hide in there when the nukes drop.
You gotta have the ice blocks delivered weekly for you.
Right.
To keep it cool.
Refrigerator and second home.
Shelter, bomb shelter.
Oh,
Nice.
man.
Okay. So that's let's move on past that one now. Another one of the big transitions for a lot of people, especially in this day and age, because these days, call it bad, call it not. If you've got to finish a certain level of school to hope to get anywhere in this world these days, but at some point we all finish our school. It doesn't matter if you only got to junior high or you got a PhD. And when your schooling is done at whatever point that is, that's a major life transition there. You go, from this to that, and working from learning all the time to and maybe not having a job, depending on what your school life was like, to working completely. I mean, there's no summer vacations, there's no winter break, there's no Martin Luther King Day off or whatever. Well, maybe it depends on where you work, but so that's a major transition too. And when you guys went through those phases, how did that hit you?
Well, I don't really. I mean, I think that's more of like for you going through the college thing,
But it's not just college, because
I mean, I was trying to think of something that for me that immediately had that sort of a change.
when
I don't know.
you stopped school, you didn't have to show up to high. So
Well, okay. Well, so I'll say this. So when I was 18, I moved to Florida to go to the American Motorcycle Institute, which was a tech school, and I.
So you went out of high school right into another school, basically.
Yeah, in a
Okay.
technical school.
Yeah.
And I was there for a year by myself, and I got into that mode where it was just school. Everything was about school.
Yeah.
I mean, everything was paid for. My rent, everything was paid for, part of the loans, and so I was just doing that. And that's a weird, it's a strange mode to be where you're just like all you're focusing on is getting to somewhere and reading, learning, taking tests. You get in this like track of things, and then when it's all gone, there's like that huge amount of structure that was gone. I was like, well, now what do I do?
Yeah,
Like it was,
totally.
for me, that was a weird transition because I'd been doing it over and over and over for all this time. Then I moved back and I started a job, and I was like, all I got to do is be at one class. I was like, oh, I mean at work, because it was weird because I've been expecting to go here and there and there. So I had this huge schedule of things I had to do all the time.
And
that
then-
was crazy for me. I remember that.
And when you get home, there's no homework.
Yeah, just beer
Wait a
drinking.
minute. Yeah.
Just barely.
Wait a minute. You mean I have the whole night to myself? There's nothing else I have to do. I mean, assuming you don't have to take your work home, but yeah, it's like there's nothing else to do. I get wasted, then pay for the hangover all day the next day.
Right. I think that's one of those things that, like, when people go through a life experience where they're extremely structured, like the military or high school,
Totally.
college, something like that, their schedule is really sort of like predetermined, depending on what their goal is. So when you make from that transition to life where you're like, what's the goal? I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet. So that structure is gone because you don't have the basics. And I see a lot of people, especially out of college, I see a lot of people who I feel like could do really well didn't because they really didn't know what to do next.
Yeah, Yeah, that makes me think too. Without that structure, it really made me think after college was finally done, it was like, okay, so obviously this is what I can accomplish, putting all this can suck all my time when somebody gives me, lays out everything I need to do in a path and constantly, feeding me more to do and to work on. What can I do when it's just myself?
How motivated are you in life in
Exactly.
general? And I think that's one of those things that starts to separate people.
Yeah.
Because are you motivated to do something on your own?
Yeah, or were you just taking the path of least resistance, even though
Right.
it was hard to do, but nevertheless, you were still following the path that was, already cut out for you.
Yeah.
When you get into the world, the open wide world, and you can go in any direction, it's like, holy crap, how do I play this game? I don't know where to go.
I feel like once you join the workforce, it would be hard to imagine doing anything else because it is so structured. You are used to just showing up to the same place every day, doing what it is you do every day, and then getting your paycheck.
Yeah, and for some,
It sucks, but it's easy.
yeah, for some
You
people,
don't have to think.
Yeah, especially for some people's jobs, if it's a very busy job that requires a lot, then that whatever level of busyness you were used to in college, you hop into the job and the career afterwards, and it's like, yeah, I just rolled right into this. It's now I got a different structure, and maybe I don't have 5 classes a day or 3 classes a day or whatever. I got 1 class that I sit in, but still, it's the same level of commitment and work or whatever. You just keep doing until you get sick of doing that after 20 years, and you're like, God damn it, this is my life.
Yep. That's
That went a little
that's very
personal there,
accurate.
man.
Yeah. Or you
I don't know,
realize
20 years in, but
or you realize like this whole game is bullshit and we're being treated poorly as human beings and we're not living the lives that we should be able to live or enjoying, I should say, the lives that we have been given.
It's definitely the rat race, and it depends on, I guess it depends on what your end game is and if you have an end plan or if your path can lead you to an end plan, and what that reward
What is
at
it?
the
An
end.
end plan.
Well, it
this
dep-
happens at the end.
Yeah, so the
You
end
die.
plan.
Who gives a shit
He-
about
Here's
So-
the shitty thing: the end plan is planned by your work, and it's called retirement. So they
Yeah.
literally expect that you're going to work all the way up till retirement, and that's the end plan. So the job gives you your end plan.
True, and
Unless you
and-
pick or choose or design your own end plan, you're stuck with that.
But that last step is your last stepping stone to, or could be your last stepping stone, assuming you choose to follow that path, could be your last stepping stone to what your ultimate plan is. So, like, let's say, I don't know, let's say you work for a very successful company that has stock options, okay, I don't know, for example, and you've been saving up, you work your way up and you're 20 or 30 years in the company and you have amassed a good amount of stock options and you are waiting to hit that retirement point. Your end game plan is to cash out on all that stock or whatever, or your 401k that you built up or whatever, and then live your life the way you want it on your own terms, because now you're, for lack of a better term, independently wealthy.
Right.
That
For the
doesn't-
11 years that you're slated
Yeah.
on the planet.
and on top of that, I think at least
You go crazy.
85% of the entire population
Doesn't
you just
have
said that to has no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, it does take a lot of planning and a lot of building up, and
And
there's-
hopefully, when you retire, you're still able to walk.
Yeah, again, that depends on how quickly you can build up that nest egg and get out
Right.
at a young enough age to take
Yeah.
advantage of it. That's totally true.
Or you're not
because
so emotionally scarred that you're just a mess anyway.
That's right. Jaded from it, yes. Well,
Train
so-
wreck Joe over there.
Yeah, so if you're in college right now and you're listening, you're thinking about what you're going to do about your career. Sorry if that discouraged you.
Yeah.
Finishing school, I missed.
Get out.
There's a lot of the
pick
school
your debt.
life.
I think pick your debt is what the college thing is now. How much are you comfortable with getting in debt for an education?
Yeah, that's in a lot of ways too.
It stopped me from going back for the last 10 years
Yeah.
because I have to pay for it out of my pocket. So,
Especially when your friends are paying off their debt that never seems to go away.
right? I know.
No. Yeah, they let you
Yeah,
defer it and you keep deferring it, and then oh man, that's true. That
But aside from those sort of transitions, I think that everybody's had like bigger emotional transitions too. Like major relationships ending, like girlfriend kind of thing, stuff like that, or
as
breaking
a
up,
result,
moving,
as
things
a
like
result of that kind of transition, leaving school, everything about your life can change, because what happens if you take a job in a different state? What happens if the job that you take becomes more demanding than your school? Or what happens if, say, you mentioned like who you're dating? Let's say they have been willing to deal with your crazy schedule in school, and then all of a sudden, with the hopes that you was going to end, and you
Right.
guys would get to spend more time together, and then you get out and you get this job that's like crazy busy, and you have no free time. Well, then all of a sudden they're like, "No, that's not what I was waiting for. I was waiting for you to have more time with me,"
Yeah, right.
And then so you may lose that relationship because of your choices after that transitionary period. So yeah, you can totally. I can see where I can imagine some scenarios where, yeah, that transition could
Be a train wreck.
oh gosh, yeah, or bring about consequences and side effects that you had no way of. Well, it will definitely bring about consequences and side effects that you had no way of anticipating. So that's a given. But yeah,
That's
there's
like when you wake up in the morning.
pretty
every
much.
day.
Yeah. Yes.
It's not like you have any control over anything,
Not really. That's and as the older you get, the more you kind of realize that too. It's like if I'm lucky, it'll be easy today.
But I think if you're lucky in life, you've had enough like rational people who have good moral compasses.
Boy, hopefully,
that
man.
have given you an ability to like understand that like major transition in life are part of the ride. And I take it back to the what I've said before is if you don't love the process, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
And I think that could be moved into living too. It may suck right now.
Heck yeah, man.
but
That's
you
a
need
blanket statement
but
for
yeah,
life.
You need to enjoy the sucky parts too because you're still breathing.
A lot of people, though, trade that for money.
Absolutely.
Wait, how do you mean?
Well, I think a lot of people
Wait.
think it's going to buy them happiness though.
Oh, the suffering.
Yeah, I mean,
The
so
sacrifice.
a lot of
Well,
people are
'cause
doing
sacrifice.
things that they hate to do
Yeah.
because they're getting paid to do it, and they know that they need that money to be able to survive. So
Yeah, need that
that's
paper.
what they do.
Yeah.
Making that evil compromise.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people do that compromise of like, is it worth it? I don't really like this. But if you're, especially like, if you're paying for other people to live, if you're keeping people alive, it changes your decision on that dramatically.
I mean,
Absolutely.
think about how it is that we describe work. I mean, it's like when people express dissatisfaction, it's like, well, if you enjoyed it, it wouldn't be work. I mean, it's almost
And then
like
we
the
pay for it.
expectation that you can't have fun at work. Like that's just not something that's going to be able to happen for you, man. Like you've got to suck it up and take your money.
I think those are almost media-driven directions to give definitions for your life and the border
it's
for you
total
to
propaganda.
survive. I mean, it's a border for you to live in. The pop culture gives you these terms that's like, like that, it's work or whatever, but you translate them and it can become barriers. Definitions
Absolutely. Your
between
average
things.
person, though, I think has ceded to that ideal. Like they expect that they're going to do work, they're not going to like it, they're going to get paid, and they're going to be able to eat, and then they're willing to make that trade.
That compromise.
Yeah.
That's right. Instead of making decisions for themselves and finding other pathways to live,
And the longer
It's
that
so
they
much
live that
easier
way,
just
the
to be
less they're
Well,
going to make decisions for
well,
themselves because they're so used to having everything just told to them, and they're happy
Well,
with that. Like
well,
they
you-
can get along. They don't have to think. They just do
the
their
next-
shitty
next
job that
thing
they
you know,
hate,
it's
and they get their
Soylent
money.
Green.
That's it.
Well,
Yeah.
remember we talked about this before, and I felt like how much of you is you when I was younger because of living in the Midwest, and it was a lot of people worked in factories, and it was like a machine moving, and you just
It
jumped
is a
into
machine
it and
moving.
became a part of it, and jobs and
You're a
everything.
cog.
So you're a cog. So for me, like when I was trying to figure out something else to do, and I was just like, I don't want to do this. One of the weirdest things to me, making the transition from being gainfully employed in the system, which I would consider the basic 9-to-5 system thing, to being free, was I always felt weird about being outside or running around at like 10:30 in the morning. Shouldn't I be at work? You know what I mean? I was like, what the hell am I doing? And it was like second guessing myself even in my own business ventures, because I was like, man, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. I should be doing something. And I was just like almost panicked because I was so conditioned to think that everything worked in that certain time frame.
That you needed a time
That
frame.
I needed to be in that
standard
too.
And then you get
business
home
hours.
after working
Right.
a long day and you're exhausted and you can't just do anything else. You just want to go to sleep and
Yep.
get up the next day to do it all over again.
Yep.
Just so you can have enough money to put gas in the car to go back the next day.
Jeez.
But think about the old school, the factories and stuff like that. So we started out, now, we have a shitty job for the most part. Back then, in some cases, you're risking your life to go to work or dismemberment or something like that. That was
working in a
that was a
factory.
thing that you knew could happen
Yeah.
at your job.
Yeah.
And you're still going there
Yeah.
to
And you-
get money.
And you
Like,
weren't getting a
that's-
payout if you got your arm chopped off
No.
like today.
No. You'd shake off a chopped off finger. Just shake it off.
Yeah.
Have some coffee.
Tape
on
it
the
up and
house.
get back on the line.
that's
You're not
right.
getting paid for standing there.
That's right. What are you doing?
Wrap it in a tissue, go have a cup of coffee, get back out there.
Walk it off.
Walk it off.
That's right.
So I mean, we're literally conditioned to expect some pretty bad shit from work and to take that paycheck and say, hey, at least I'm not going to die.
Well, yeah, right. Well, I think in that regard, we're,
Maybe I have exceeded my chances of dying a little bit.
just today.
just today.
But we've been conditioned to think that it's so cruel and horrible that that's the acceptable level, because that's the way it's just it is. So when you go to a job and this job sucks, and you're like, you've been told your entire existence jobs suck.
You gotta
and
work.
you
And
translate
yeah.
it to this is what everybody was talking about, dude. I just blend right in and keep on going.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you just become an automaton.
I could see how you could use that to kind of try and reprogram yourself along the lines of the emotions episode that we did, right? It's like you could listen to what everybody has said and take the negatives and reinforce that with your daily experience, telling yourself, man, this does suck, man, this does suck. Or you could take the opposite of that and tell yourself that it's pleasant, it's the best experience ever, and you're just as happy as a puppy with two Peters.
But is that
Always.
real, or are you tricking yourself?
I don't know what is real. I mean, because
Exactly.
one man's pleasure is another man's pain, and you can't know pleasure without
Yeah, but if
knowing
you have
pain.
to tell yourself that it's great, is it?
but what Thomas is describing is you're telling yourself it's bad.
But
is that not the
you've
same in the
grown
opposite?
up
Well, you're more
expecting it to
conditioned.
be bad.
Exactly.
So that
So
when,
you accept
when
it.
when you get there, yeah, exactly. There's nothing to complain about. What do you expect? You've been told your entire life that it's going to be shitty. Take your
Right.
paycheck and go home.
That's a crappy way to go through life with your elders being like, it sucks bad. Get out there and win.
We're all rooting
Why
for
are
you.
you winning?
We're all rooting for you.
Just don't come back.
It's like coming back to your house with your fucking black eye to do laundry. It's like, how was out there life? I go, how was I going out there? And you're just like, oh man, cut me, Mick.
About as shitty as I've been told.
But you accepted it because you've been conditioned to do that. If you're a rich kid or you're some college kid that's been told that you're going to graduate and everything's going to be amazing, you're going to make $2 million a year, and you get out in the real world and you're like, fuck, nobody's listening to me. Well. Oh, this is hard.
That would be a tough transition.
I don't know. And I think
Having everything taken care of for you in every way, and then suddenly
Not.
having to take care of everything.
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah,
everything.
I think I think obviously that conditioning sucks that your elders do it, and that's the way life is. People tell you bad things about stuff like having a job, and so you get conditioned to that. But I feel like in some ways maybe it's our culture trying to protect us, so we don't lose our shit when it does get bad. We've been told that that's going to happen.
Okay.
You need to learn how to deal with it.
Interesting. Well, that's an interesting angle. I definitely hadn't thought of that.
Nice moves.
Yeah.
Where are we
Nice
going?
moves. On to the
Put a
next
good
topic.
spin on that.
On to the next topic.
Yeah, great spin, Thomas.
And here we go.
So I had for the next one, because I'm kind of like going in my mind at least, a chronological order of what people generally do with their life, at least in this country. And that was getting married. And I was misinformed. I thought Trevor was actually married. Found out that Shane had been married. So we can kind of combine that one with, I think we're going to transition it a little differently to maybe living with somebody, because that is a life transition actually.
Well, I would consider living with somebody like a friend, a roommate, not even close to living with somebody
how about
like
a significant
girlfriend.
other?
That's what I'm saying.
Well, in our case, a girlfriend could be a boyfriend too. But
Well, whatever.
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever your
A
significant
significant
other
other.
is.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not getting married, but maybe we'll scratch that one. But Shane can talk to that if he likes. But also, we could kind of turn this to.
It looks like
a
he doesn't like.
He doesn't.
It's X, right?
I don't,
It's
I
X,
don't know what
Y.
to say about it. It's a big celebration for getting into a relationship, basically, is what it is.
Yeah.
And it just makes you feel more or less like you can get out because there was an enormous
I
party.
agree.
He said
Yeah.
it's a trap.
I do.
Now
I
you
agree.
can never leave.
But we had that party.
No,
Exactly.
This is like, we wrote things on
Dude,
paper for this.
The ring, man.
I choreographed the
paper.
walk, Shane.
This is
You
a
can't
legal
get divorced.
document right here. This is a legal document.
Legally binding document. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
so that's that.
None of it actually has to happen.
Is that what you
could just
expected?
be-
Is that what you expected from me?
Well, you just described how the life transition affected you.
There you go. That was pretty straightforward. I believe.
Immediate
Very nice.
fear.
It's
and
very simple.
entrapment.
It's very, very simple.
Shane, tell us how you really feel.
If you didn't get it already, man, I don't know what to tell you. You're a little bit slow.
Tom's been
Okay.
married.
Don't hold back.
Tom has not been married.
I have been.
Yes,
You've
he
been married?
has.
I keep forgetting. I think you have told me
I
about
told
this.
you that.
I keep forgetting.
So,
But never listen to me.
so
I love you, man.
was it similar?
Trevor's nodding over here. He's gonna
I-
nod his head off his shoulder.
Not in air.
I'm gonna say yeah. Yeah, but I mean, for me, it was very unplanned, and it just kind of happened, and I was like, this
Wait,
was a
okay,
bad
so
idea.
you were 25. Shane was 25. Sorry, nobody can see me point. Thomas, how old were you?
23.
God damn, you guys are like,
I know, it was like
I have
a-
this like firm belief that nobody should get married. I mean, they should live together, but nobody should be considering any lifelong commitments until they're like at least 30.
Well, you figure I'd been on my own at that point for like 9 years,
That's
like a
true.
decade.
Yeah, that's true. You'd already been out there on your own, longer than most at that point. Interesting.
Yeah,
So
if you
how-
think about the fact that most people used to die at 50, I mean,
Right?
dude, now we're like living to 100. So I
Yeah.
mean, it's like,
it's bonkers.
how long were you, Shane? How long were you married?
A year.
And wow,
Nice.
So
nice
it-
moves.
I was
Shit,
in a
dude.
relationship with the same person for 3 years.
okay.
We
Well,
lived.
that's an ample amount of time.
We
I
lived
think.
together for a year before we got married, but the marriage lasted 1 year.
Interesting. Thomas, how long?
Dated for like 2.5 years or something, and was married for like a year.
Damn, that's the
Yeah.
magic number there for
Dude,
that.
based on people that I've
I
spoken
have heard
to,
that before, too.
we are the smart ones.
You're smart.
I've talked to a lot of
Get
people
that shit out early. Get it done and over with.
who after a year felt the same way, but then they had kids, and 10 years later,
Oh,
they're
yeah.
in a relationship that they've hated for 10 years.
So
I
we'll,
mean,
we'll get to the kids thing next because that's a whole
Yeah.
different dynamic. But yeah. So literally 1 year, the honeymoon phase is over. Like,
Well, it was never really a honeymoon phase, and I think a lot of young people who get married, they're just kind of like running. Everything's moving so fast, and you're just like
It's also a thing passed in front of you. Here's your checklist
Yeah.
of life.
yes.
You're
Yeah.
supposed to do this. You go to
Yes.
college and meet your girlfriend.
Yeah, and the other thing I found
Then
too
you go to
is-
work and have babies and
Yeah.
accumulate your debt.
Yeah, if you come from a strong religious background and you are religious, then you run into the we can't fuck until we're married. And I
that
don't
in the
Why would
Bible
God want
specifically?
that?
I don't know about you, but
kinda kills the followers
You
thing.
keep sex for
Exactly.
me until I'm like 23. Yeah, I'm probably gonna marry somebody just to get it
And
Yeah.
and you
And,
might accidentally make a half a dozen babies.
in
in
the
the first
process.
night.
I don't know how many girls you date at a time. but-
His Tinder is banging,
No!
banging.
Swiping, swiping, swiping.
God, yeah. So marriage and living with okay. Those are the marriage situations. What about living with a girl? So I've never actually lived with a girl that I was dating. So even despite
I've lived with almost every girl I've dated my
Wow.
entire adult life, but I don't have like short-term relationships. That's dating.
well,
Moving
same here.
into somebody is
My
somebody that you're-
relationships have been some have been 4 or 5 years long. We just
Yeah.
never lived together.
Yeah, well, but also I think too when you're younger and you're not as established, like you don't own your own house and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
it's much easier for people because they're starting out in life. They don't have anything. They both don't have anything.
So they combine.
So yeah,
resources.
it makes it easier to survive if you have a team,
Sure.
two people. So that was my situation. It made it easier to survive. So
How was the life again with respect to life transitions? How do you feel it changed your life experience when you the first time you lived with a girl in your case?
yeah, I mean, I don't really remember it so long ago. To be
Was it,
honest.
apparently it
It's
wasn't that big of a deal.
like- no, well, I had 3 sisters, so I
Oh,
lived with
well,
girls
okay.
when I was younger. So
Except
I like
this one you got to have sex with.
yeah.
I would hope that would be a slight change. Shane's like,
and I was grown up.
I mean, that's one of the main things. I mean, if you're living with women, you learn a lot about women. So, I mean, if you move in with your first girlfriend, you start learning a lot about women. But
how dirty
you
they
know,
can be. You learn to
if you
clean
have
drains and vacuum cleaners.
Right. But if you have sisters, you learn some things like they need
Yeah,
a little
so
more
if you've,
space
if you
anytime.
already- yeah.
Don't knock twice.
Actually, I think it makes you a better human.
Put the
all
toilet
the
seat
way
down.
I would
around.
agree. Yeah.
Right.
At this
I think it
point now, I can definitely say that from getting to watch kids grow up. It's better to be exposed to all that stuff. So a lot of people in high school, dude-wise, wouldn't know anything about a
What's it-
girl's period
Well,
until
yeah.
it happened somewhere
Yeah.
around them.
Well,
Whereas
yeah.
Tom's like, I got sisters.
Yeah.
This is,
And this is normal.
He's
I
like
know
a
this already. I know this
vanguard.
already.
Well, we've
Yeah.
talked. Well, Ben and I have talked about this before. People, guys, and they're older, and dating is really awkward for them because they don't know anything about girls, and they're scared to death of them because they had brothers. They didn't have sisters.
Yeah, I had
Right.
one
when I
brother.
was
That's
yo-
it.
when I was younger and transitioning into like dating and stuff like that, I knew a lot more about girls because I had 3 stepsisters.
That's right. We have talked about this. Yeah. So I grew up with just one brother, and girls really do freak me out, especially if they're attractive. The hotter they are, the the scarier they are. So yeah, and Thomas had brought that angle up to me with the damn, that's
They're just
a problem.
people, just like your siblings. So when you
Yeah,
have
see-
siblings that are sisters, girls out in the world kind of just are more like
And-
your sisters.
Yeah, and more than that too. Like all of your sisters had girlfriends, and those
Yeah.
people were around too. So you were really exposed to a lot of females, you know,
Yeah.
at all ages of life.
Yeah,
and that
so you just
was
have
not
a bigger,
the case for me.
you have a bigger social audience, and I think that's the biggest part is you have a bigger social audience, and you're used to that when you're not.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I think single, you know, like kids that grow up with no siblings at all.
Oh, that's
yeah.
harsh to be an only child. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
kind of
only
weird.
child.
I dated an only child once, and she was an amazing person, but there were things.
There wasn't
that
room for
were-
both of you.
The what?
There wasn't room for both of
No,
you.
yeah, she wouldn't share her toys. She never learned to share.
Did she at least let you watch?
No, no problems in that area. But
You had to watch from the closet dressed as Batman
the outside window. No, man, that's weird.
on a ladder.
Yeah, comments on that before we move on? You too?
Well, I mean, he mentioned, I don't know if it was about living with women so much or whether
Significant
it
other.
was necessarily a relationship or not, but living with women made you a better person, or you thought it
Oh, yeah, I
makes
was-
you a better person?
Well, I mean, you know how
Well-rounded.
if you're just imagine like what you would learn hanging out with nothing but football players about any other subject.
You are who you surround yourself with? Is that what you're
Exactly.
getting at?
So
Okay.
when that's an opportunity, a pretty rare opportunity to, I remember when I was in high school, everyone always thought, well, you can't have a friend that's a girl. And I
Yeah.
was always like, why not?
Shit, it's tough now, too.
They're human beings, right? So I've always been able to have friends that are girls without trying to get anything from them other than their friendship. So
Yeah.
by the time I moved in with girlfriends, it was like, I have all the stuff. Every time
Yeah.
I have all the stuff, you're moving in with me.
Yeah.
So in that case, you're coming into my world is already established.
Yep, that's how it is for
You
me.
deal
yeah.
with
Or would be.
bathroom stuff, like stuff everywhere, and then they're like, your socks are on the floor. I'm like, your shit covers everything that has a flat surface in the bathroom. You know what I mean? And those kinds of transitions, those are normal things. Like, even if two dudes live together.
Cohabitating is a strange event. And just,
So
Yeah.
I mean,
It
to go
sure
back
is.
the football people or whatever, people that are
analogy?
like you,
the football people.
people that are like you, you're not learning really to think outside of yourself. When shit's on the floor
that's
and your
true.
shit's on the floor, like everybody shits on the floor. That's normal, and you're not learning to think about. You're not learning to think about really other people and what they do and their needs,
Or-
anything different. So when you said that it makes you a better person, you start to have to think about other people.
That's
Well, sure. That's the number one thing is that you have the bonus of growing up with girls, and all of the rest of us had to learn our own ways, mostly from
Some of us never
our
learned.
mothers. That's your first girl that you deal with.
That's very Freudian of you, but okay. That's awesome. You're right. You're right.
What else do you have?
That is actually so you kind of
could
So
have a
it does.
neighbor's
If you know
cousin.
if you know that females are prone to doing things like that and how they react to things,
Hey,
you're gonna
man.
have an easier time
hey man,
dealing
that's
with
sexist, man.
I think
Well,
you
I
have
mean,
a, I think
the-
you have
It is if I was saying something
flip side,
sexist.
Though the flip side is also true. You realize that you do stuff that they don't understand. You're like,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
shit, I didn't even
Right.
think about that ever being a problem for
And then-
anybody.
and
Like,
then just strip
nobody's
away
ever said
the-
anything about it. Yeah.
You strip away the male and the female part, and you're just to human beings. Like that's
Like,
every
yes,
human being.
It goes back to that cohabitating thing, and I don't know. For me, like I was always more comfortable around girls, like I said, in dating or school thing, because I went home and hung out with one, my sister. So it wasn't like I didn't feel like it was like I think a lot of people, whether boys and girls, look at the opposite sex like an alien.
Yes,
I
do.
They're like,
They
I don't
are.
know. I don't know if they'll kill me. I don't know if they'll eat me. I don't know anything about
What
them.
does this thing want?
Yeah, but for some reason you want them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I mean, the alternative is there's two alternatives, I guess. You could have nothing, or you could become gay. And that's if that works for you, great. But if it doesn't, it doesn't leave
So
you a
there's
lot of
always gonna be
options.
that yin and yang of
Yep. It doesn't
men are
leave you
from
a lot of
Mars and
options.
what's the book Venus thing?
Men are from Mars, women from Venus.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, Thomas. Okay, next one. And only one of us can really speak to this one, but I was very thankful to have Trevor here for this because otherwise we would have just cut it off. And that would have been unfortunate because it is a major life transition for a majority of people on the planet. Having children. Before we get into this, I have to tell you guys, because I thought about it afterwards and wrote it down. I saw the funniest damn bumper sticker. I don't know, it was about a couple months ago or whatever somebody had. You know how a lot of people have those. Sorry, I didn't mean to clear my throat in the damn microphone. A lot of people have the baby on board bumper stickers. I saw somebody, I can't remember now because it slipped my memory. I can't remember what the little icon or the picture was or whatever, but the wording on the bumper sticker said, huge financial burden on board. I was like, yes, dude, coolest parent ever.
Was there a picture of a little kid?
I don't remember what it was now. I can't remember what the hell I can't remember. Something like it was like a stack of dollar bills in a bow, like a baby bow or something like that. I really can't remember what the hell it was. But if you Google that, huge financial burden on board, you will find, and then look at images, you will find the sticker. Wow. It's on Amazon or whatever. I just thought it was fucking hilarious. So,
It's pretty dark sounding, actually.
Right?
It is kind of.
That's
dark.
why.
Is it not the truth though?
That's why
God.
I've been like it.
Yeah, if you don't have children, then maybe it is.
You said so, like before we started recording, your thing was, I'm going to allot all of my resources to this thing.
Resources aren't just money.
Well, but a financial
Money
burden
is
would be
money
a
is
resource.
about this much. You can't see it, but it's very tiny.
Very tiny. Do you see how
It doesn't cost me more because there's more people in the house, except for maybe food. But like I'm already heating a house.
That's true.
I
And you're already paying for a house. Well,
my house.
What about clothing?
Well, that's
clothe
something
them.
we all have to do.
But you got to clothe them. That's an extra cost.
This is true, but
You got to
there's
school them. That's an extra cost. So aside from the
Well-
cost, though, I didn't want to get to that. We've already done
you're
the,
just
the
like
choice
stripping
to,
all the
He's
fun
not
out of
going to
being
want
a
to go
parent
home
right now.
after this.
We've already done the
damn.
choice to not have children episode, which was one of our early ones, right?
You guys aren't going to fight me or anything, are you? Holy shit!
No, we'll catch you outside. No. But what I wanted to focus on with this is, after your first child, let's say, how did your life change? But more to the effect of how it directly affected you personally. Because I mean, obviously, the mother, obviously, her life changed. Your life changed with your living situation. But internally, how do you feel now that you've gone through this transition as a parent, or bringing in a child of your own into your
Well,
life?
first of all, it was a choice. It wasn't just something that, whoops, look what happened.
And that makes a damn big difference.
It
So it's a
does
good
make-
point to make.
It does make a difference because then you're prepared, on various levels. I even
How old were you for the first one?
42.
What
41?
the hell?
I don't know. I
Dude,
wasn't
that's,
41.
That's late in life. And how old is the mother?
She's 37 now.
Okay, so she's a little bit young, but still.
So
even-
she was young too.
Yeah.
She was younger than me.
Yeah.
She's like 13 years younger than me.
That's still kind of late to in life, but I mean these days up to
It
40
makes
is.
all the difference because I've already went through all my growing up stuff and what am I going to do with myself and how am I going to take care of myself,
Yeah.
and then I figured it all out. And so having a child come along, well, this is the perfect time because the machine's already set up
Gotcha.
to run us.
Yeah.
So
I
yes,
like that way of looking at it, dude. That's
It's
pretty
like graduating,
industrious.
getting in your job, getting things settled, then having a family.
It's not
See,
like
that's why I was
I-
saying 30, dude. Nobody should be looking at this stuff until
Like
they're at least 30.
35.
Yeah, well, whatever. At least
I'm gonna say
looking
at
at
least
it.
35.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, 30 is where I tell people, like, if you don't have or understand what you are in this system by that time, you might not.
Yeah.
You
There
know,
might be no hope for you.
you're either like on your way in school to learn what you
Not
want to
very-
learn to
Not
do.
very positive, Trevor.
yeah,
Well, I know, but this
No,
is
but
just
dude, that's
through,
the hard knocks of life, man.
This
I was
is
like-
through observation only.
Yeah.
Like anyone who's still bar hopping at age 30 will be bar hopping at age 50. Period.
I hope so. That's the plan,
Don't
man.
kill my
One
dreams,
day-
man.
Yeah, one day you'll look back and be like, I spent $40,000 on beer.
I lecture my brother on this.
I
He's
could have
younger
went
all
around
the time.
entire planet 14 times.
Maybe I just wanted to drink my way through
That's
the planet.
totally cool, though. It's your shit. You made the money. You can do what you want.
Yeah.
But when you're a parent, you have to run it through a filtration system. Okay, now I have an opportunity to come out here
Yeah.
and visit Tom and see some music that would be pretty rare to see. So that the opportunity costs me leaving my whole family behind to come here, and I have to allocate resources to do that as well. So let's say I want something silly like a Boba Fett costume,
Oh, nice.
like like
Stormtrooper,
movie
Stormtrooper.
movie quality. Boba Fett costume, then I have to be like, well, you know, is this worth it? And am I willing to divert resources from my family? And do I feel okay about such
Little
a thing?
Johnny, you're not getting that front tooth fixed, buddy.
sorry.
Daddy's got to have a Boba Fett
I'm
costume.
sorry, your crossbite's gonna have to wait. I need this lightsaber pronto. But yeah, so you have to think about, you know, what is coming in and what's going out, just like anyone else.
I think it's
There's
like a
just
small business almost.
It really is a
Your
small
family
business.
is a small business for sure.
Like, I'm growing
and
humans.
you're never the boss.
Growing humans.
Come on down. I'm
really-
growing humans. Look
Yeah,
at them go. They grow like weeds.
It's like a mixture of water. These kids come over and he sprinkles it on them each day.
Yeah.
Except
Go away.
that water is money.
Not as much as you think. I mean, yes, you have to pay for them to go to school, and they're easy to feed because you're already feeding yourself.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, it's really not that much extra money-wise. It's really extra what you do with your time-wise, because now you're responsible for another human being.
Yep.
You know, and you want them to grow up, and we all know no one grows up perfect.
Yep.
So my thing is like, I'm just gonna kind of course correct you, and when I see that you have proclivities towards something, I'm gonna be like, well, maybe you should look into that a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be the person that I needed when I was younger that I didn't have, and I have that opportunity to make better people.
I like it. So it probably goes without saying, but just to ask it and put it out there, do you feel that you are a better person now that you have had children?
I felt like I was a good person before.
Better. I mean,
No.
no, really? You don't feel...
No, because going through so much existential stuff in your life, you just end up figuring out that, like, good and bad are ideals, and your morality is wrapped up differently than mine is. So, what is good or bad? I donated a single cell and made a human being with a woman.
Is that how it's done?
That's correct.
Yes, Ben.
You do need both.
We'll go through the pamphlet later.
Maybe other people see that I am a better person because I'm willing to take on a responsibility for the future through children, or my genetic bloodline. But realistically, I felt like I was a pretty good person to begin with.
Well, it's interesting when you say that because I have had friends that after they became parents, they thought they were the know-it-alls motherfuckers on the planet.
That's annoying.
Like they had everything
That is
figured
very
out.
annoying.
Well, I have a kid. Now you wouldn't know. Like all of a sudden they got
Yeah.
some supreme knowledge.
Yeah. Like I can't imagine doing what every other damn human before you has done before. It's not like
Right.
it's a rare thing.
You're the first
No.
one to get a child to stay alive for 10 years.
Wow, good job.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
like-
I don't even want to go down that path, but yes, I hear what you're saying.
I make sure my kids can eat. Yeah, you're supposed to do that. Like you don't get
Because it would be
applause.
child neglect if you didn't, asshole.
That's right.
I have a bumper sticker on my car that talks about my honor student kicking your student's ass.
Right.
Okay, let's keep moving. Wow, I thought this was going to be a short episode, but I guess not. You guys are in it for longer. Let's talk about career changes. I don't know if you guys have gone through major career changes, but I want this. Thomas had brought up a good angle on this too when we were just pre-discussing the topic. I wanted the concept of career change and that as a life transition to also include, if you have been so fortunate to experience, going from working for a corporate or big company or whatever to working for yourself, because that's a hell of a transition to make too. So, career changes. Have any of you guys experienced big career changes? I know. Actually, let's start with Thomas on this because you did go from working from a job to working for yourself at some point in your life, and that life transition. How was it for you, and how do you feel like it's shaped you?
Well, for me, like when, as I said earlier, I grew up in an era where it was like you went to work. During the day, you're at work. There was no exception. So that mental, beating into my social thought of life was always weird and rough. And when I worked for most jobs, I was like, I never felt, I was like, God, this is all I make. I was like, this is terrible pay.
Spending all day, and this is all I'm getting.
Yeah, and this is all I get out of it. But it was many years later, and we toured in band for about 10 years together, so I was in and out of jobs a lot. Some people in the band couldn't keep a job because you're touring and do things. So I had this kind of period where I was like sort of separating myself from that day-to-day 9-to-5er kind of identity already. I feel like the touring was like a soft removal from what I had been ingrained with.
That was your transitionary
My
period,
transitionary
right? Okay.
time, and I thought about that way later on, years later. But when the band was over, and I was kind of like, oh, what do I do? I don't barely really have a job because I didn't have a job because of the band. I'm like, that was a major transition of like, what's next? I needed money. I need a place to live. I need to figure out some sort of plan. And I felt a little bit, freaked out because I was like, this is a lot to endure. And so I just took any crappy job I could get. And as I was doing that, I was like, you know what, this is a crappy job. Let me focus on things I actually enjoy. I just wanted to learn and expand. Well, that learning and expanding turned into something that I was like, hey, maybe I could sell this. And I sold a couple things. I made more money selling the first 2 things I ever sold, making stuff for a living, than I had made at some jobs for a month at a time. And so I was like, for me, it was like somebody opened a door and it was like, the world is out there. In here is a broom closet.
Yeah, for sure.
And so for me, it was a very liberating, fuck this, I'm going to at least try.
Like boundaries had been lifted, huh?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, I think the school system really puts blinders on you and focuses you in one area. You can only succeed if you do this.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
once you have an eye-opening experience like Tom had, then
Which
it
is-
changes you forever. You're like, wait a minute, that's not the way it is.
There are other
It's
options
very
to make
cool,
money?
yeah, to see that there isn't what you've been told that's it. You go to school, you get a job, you retire. That's life.
Especially
Done.
with the
It's done.
exposure to trades and arts that have a lot of which have been removed from high school. A lot
Right.
of students aren't even getting exposed to anything else, so you have no idea of anything other that you can do but go to school.
Yeah.
That's like all. So I can learn history, I can learn math, I can learn biology, I can learn
Do you
chemistry.
think they're trying
That's
to unlearn that stuff from our society? Because
mean
that's what
art?
they always pick on, art and music in schools.
I don't
Yeah.
know about art, but as far as the trades go, aside from the major thing is the liability and kids hurting themselves and the parents suing, that is definitely a big motivator. But on the other side of the same coin, and I think with the exception of welding, because it is from friends that I've known and from knowing Thomas, I do believe that there is a fairly easy way to make a living being a welder, because there's a lot of jobs to do welding, and it's extremely machines can do welding, but a lot of the types of welding that need to be done cannot be done by machines. That's simply not repetitive stuff. It needs a physical being in there. But I think that a lot of those have been removed from the schools because this country is like pigs in a trough. We buy everything from
We're so far
China.
away from industrialization.
Yeah, I mean,
you know?
we don't need to train or raise people that do that anymore because they're not going to do it anyway. We're going to buy it from China. They would want too much money to survive in this country. They're better off making $15 an hour at McDonald's than they are learning to become a plumber.
Right.
At least they're told that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you own the plumbing company, but if you can build up the company, but now you have to be a businessman or woman. You have to be, organized enough to build that up. You have to have startup cash to put it together. I mean, there's a lot more involved in owning the business. That's a whole different story because now you're a small business owner or a big business owner if you get bigger, right? But the actual trade, I mean, how much money are you going to make installing alarms? I mean, you can build up to
lot.
something. You can, but when you come right out of high school,
Thieving-ass society like this,
yeah, well.
I'm going to put an alarm on my alarm, man. You see these crackheads walking around the streets?
I just bought a new alarm. Somebody stole
I just
it.
bought a guillotine.
Somebody stole my alarm, yes. So maybe that's a bad example, but nevertheless, I mean, a lot of these trades that you can learn, there's just really hard to make money and get a job in them.
But I mean, but the transition of
I don't think that's right because there's like the HVAC right now.
HVAC is serious.
They're
Yeah.
suffering because they can't get people to come in
Yes.
because
There's a
no
lot of
one
things
wants
that
to
are suffering,
actually
yeah.
work for a
Yeah,
living.
and you know what's ridiculous too about the HVAC? Because so coming from a homeowner and I do everything myself because first I don't want to pay somebody. Second of all, I love learning how to do stuff.
Sure.
Right? HVAC is one of the last best kept secrets in residential HVAC.
Oh, man,
the
that's
stuff is
incredible.
not crazy hard, but go on YouTube and try and learn videos on how to do a lot of HVAC stuff. You won't find much. So they've shot themselves in the foot by hiding that information, and that's exactly what they're doing. They don't. So, like for example, plumbers. There's forums on the internet dedicated for plumbers that will help you and ask. You can ask them anything, and those guys will give you all. They'll tell you codes. Same thing with electrical. You can find all the information necessary to do pretty much anything you would do in a residential dwelling for plumbing and electrical. However, HVAC, it's just not nearly as much out there. Like, for example, I'll give a specific example. I would love to put my own mini split in. Installing a mini split, there's a couple of specialized tools, there's a couple of specialized techniques, and you can kind of jerry-rig your way through, and provided you don't run into any complications, it'll go smooth and
Or
you'll be
blow
fine.
your house up.
Yeah, exactly. But if you try to find the amount of specific DIY tutorials to follow to do this installation, you will not.
Oh, yeah.
So I believe after I got the house, a decade ago and have gone through these things, I do believe that they have shot themselves in the foot if they are hurting for people because people aren't getting an interest. They're not learning to do it themselves. They're not.
I just don't think that people in general want to do anything manual because
dirty
they believe
manual
it's
work.
below
and it's
them.
hot as shit when you're in the attic working on stuff.
Oh,
and
yeah,
like,
dude,
it's
yeah.
brutal. It can be
Yeah.
brutal.
It's gross too, I'm sure, but whatever.
My AC had a condensation problem where it was leaking through the damn ceiling, and I had to call a HVAC guy, right? He was a totally cool dude, and I went up there and hung out with him because I love learning that stuff, right? But dude, we were sweating balls after it was in the middle of summer too. Of course, that's when your AC has a problem. It's right in the middle of summer. Can't be at the beginning, can't be at the end. It's right in the middle.
Never in January.
Never. Well, you're not running your AC, but yeah, still. It could start at least the first time I turn it on, right? When it's 85 or something outside or whatever. Anyway, yeah, dude, I was like, man, you do this on any, and it was nothing for him, right? I mean, he just
He's used
wiped
to
it
it.
off, and because he's used to it. Yeah, I was up there like, fuck, dude, are we gonna die up here? It is freaking hot.
He's
up
probably
here.
keeping you up on purpose to see how long you could take it.
Yeah, right. Well, no, he didn't care. I just kind of went up there, on my own. But yeah, it was brutal. So, but yeah, you might be right too. Is it just people? They don't want to learn. They're lazy.
I
or they
don't.
just-
I don't think
maybe-
it's again a problem with not letting people know what kind of variance that you can get away with, and still be a part of society. There's all kinds of fringe things. Like everyone always thinks, well, I can't transition from high school senior to CEO. I have to work at McDonald's. All there is fast food jobs, but there isn't. There's all kinds of in between weird jobs that you can do in your transition.
And the band is a nice one.
That
like
would-
his
that really
explanation.
separates you from the machine.
That explanation of transitioning to self-employment sounded like a sweet, sweet dream.
A sweet, sweet dream. It was definitely fun while it lasted.
Is that what it was? Tom, was it a sweet, sweet dream?
Well, that's definitely not how I would describe it.
Well, I mean, as the band kid, probably, right? I mean, things are rough. As you try and sustain that, things get rough. But I mean, that sounded like a great story. Like, you're a kid, you had a job.
Shane's
you-
inspired, dude. He's gonna
you
run away and join
start-
the circus now.
No, I mean, so
Start
I
a
mean,
band, Shane.
I am self-employed as well, but I got dropped into self-employment by being fired from my last job. I
Sometimes
feel
that's a
like
good
I'm a
kick,
good
dude.
person too. Like
a
this
hard
guy over
thing.
here.
Yeah, man.
I feel like I'm a good person, and I think most people like me unless I am their employee.
Apparently not the last job.
Yeah, unless I'm their employee, then I am the devil.
Wait, employee or
And so
employer?
employee. Oh, so my employer thinks I'm the devil.
Oh, you're really?
Yeah.
Are you
so
a bad
I've been,
employee?
I must be a terrible fucking employee. So, because I've been
You
fired
should have
from,
stopped wearing
I've been
that red
fired
hat with
from
the horns on it
I've
all
been
the
fired
time.
from several jobs, and so my last job I was doing phone support for Apple, and
nice.
I was doing a good job doing that. I'm actually wearing
You
a
are.
shirt
I
that I
didn't
got from
notice.
Apple.
He's wearing an
Actually, now
Apple
that I think
shirt.
about it,
We
Thanks
are
for
not
the shirt.
affiliated in any way,
yeah,
shape,
free
or form.
shirt, free shirt. But
Think differently.
I had tension with the management there, and they fired me. And so I had been fired from a state job as well. So I've worked for the state also. And this job, though, it was the best paying job I've ever had. It was terrible. Like, I mean, the tensions, because I've been doing phone support, so I'm talking to people that are unhappy.
And dumb.
And then I come to find out that I have tensions with my employers, so they're unhappy. So I'm not talking to any happy people at my work.
Right. Basically, you leave your house and everyone's just angry with you or around
Right,
you.
and-
At you.
To boot, I can monitor my own work, so I know I'm not doing bad work. So I don't really understand what this is coming from, and a lot of this, like you may understand, because I think you work for the state, yeah. So I mean, there's politics.
Oh, yeah.
And
I have
so
worked for the
It
state
is
as
government.
well.
when you start
It is
to be
government.
doing a job, right, and you feel like you're doing an okay job, and then you realize there's this other stuff that goes on that's expected from you that is outside the work that you've been hired
That's
to do.
that other 5% on the duty statement, buddy.
Right. So
Other duties
when
as
I
required.
got fired from that job, and I had been investing, so I had something put away. So he had mentioned some, if you have at least some kind of plan or some kind of cushion.
You prepare.
But this was not the
mattress to fall on.
sweet dream that Thomas had, where he goes on tour and experiences the ability to make money by any stretch of the imagination. I lost that last job, and I was just done with employment at that point. And I was like, this is fucking bullshit. And so I just tried to figure out other ways to make money. And so, now I do film stuff. So I do some acting, I do some filmmaking, camera work and things like that. But I do house sitting, I do whatever kind of odd job that can bring in money, that can sustain me at this point, that I can do. And I build up anything that I enjoy and think I'm good at. So
It's a little off topic. Can I just say, I think that we should, at some point, work to put together a montage video, collage video of Thomas's life and call it Thomas's Sweet, Sweet Dreams.
absolutely. We're going to do that for his funeral.
What is
Like,
it?
like a Kenny Loggins soundtrack.
Yes, dude. We got Elmer the cat up there with his little whispering sweet nothings and words going across the screen. Dude, Thomas's Sweet, Sweet Dreams.
I mean,
Like a sad
the flip
song.
side of it, though, the bats being dumped out, out of his house when he was a kid. That's the other side of it. But the whole
Yeah,
learning
right.
self-employment, that was a nice
I
experience to
I'm
be able to learn
picking up
that.
what you're putting down. That was pretty
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, I got that too.
If you think about it, you have to be super crafty at that age to figure out how to do anything.
Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah,
You'd have
absolutely.
found me on the side of the road in fetal position crying.
And I
Yeah.
think
Nah, if
for
you were
me-
thrown into that, you'd be there, and then you'd be like, you know what? Screw that. I'm going to figure out how to do this. Because that's how every transition you should almost wet your pants before it. Because if you're not, what's it worth?
Yeah, nothing risk, nothing gain, right?
Right.
There you go.
But I think too, for me, those transitions were driven by a creative desire other than a financial desire. And had I grown up in a different
Yeah.
environment or was somebody who was more financial,
Yeah, but in the
savvy
beginning,
person,
it was a motivation, a survival motivated,
Well,
motivated
yeah.
by survival.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
you were
I mean, through
a
the
musician
jobs
before that, right?
Yeah.
So he was already doing music, and he then discovered that he can make money doing music.
well, I didn't
And-
really make
No,
money
he
making
didn't
music.
say anything about
Well, I mean,
that.
but when he
Yeah.
went on tour, how did you survive on tour?
You
We
barely survive.
survive. You just hope
so where did
you
you get
barely.
money?
So whatever was left, we all had crappy jobs that people would let us work here and there when we were off the road to make extra money. And if there were lots of times when whatever you made that night at the show, which was almost nothing in the '90s, you paid for gas, and if you were gonna have to pay for somebody to stay, you paid that first, and then what was left over you ate with. And usually,
I think we paid ourselves in food once.
yeah. So it was just like we all had to just scrape money and have money from having crappy jobs and doing whatever we could.
So
when we
I
worked on the road.
misunderstood because that doesn't sound like a transition. I mean,
Well, the
right? That
transition-
didn't-
well, the
How'd
transition
you figure
was-
out that you would be able to
The trans-
survive doing stuff?
So the transition was when you're on the road and you're touring, you're managing something, you're making something work, and you're figuring out how to survive with whatever, however you're getting money. Our money was playing shows, selling T-shirts, whatever. It was a very minimal amount of money. So I was learning how to survive on a minimal amount of money. My life became survivable at a very short amount of money, and I realized I was able to still accomplish a large amount of things. Money wasn't the most important part. It was more about the drive and the willingness to put in the time. Just
So
like the
that-
work
the
ethic I
experience.
had.
That more
experience.
closely matches because when I lost my job, that was the same thing, surviving on what it is I had
Yeah, yeah.
for as long as I could, and then understanding how to do that, and then realizing that since I can survive on that little, I can earn that money myself.
Well, what-
I don't
Right.
need a job to
Well,
do that.
Well, I think the more important part to take from that was that I learned that I could be away from that and still survive.
Yeah.
I didn't have to go to work every day.
Proof of concept, right?
I proved, it proved
yourself.
that I didn't have to rely on that to be able to make it. And I was like, well, and then I sort of woke up and realized during those years, like, well, I don't really need a lot of money to survive if I'm not greedy and don't want to have a bunch of dumb shit. And if it's more about exploring and being creative and doing things, I'm living a life that's more geared toward trying to accomplish something. So if you're busy and working and moving, money kind of just happens because you're moving and doing and working. You're willing to do other
I
things.
feel like we should have left it where it was at, because now we can no longer do that montage, man.
Oh no, I'm doing it.
He ruined the sweet dream.
The sweet dream
Hey,
is
I guess-
gone, man.
Hey, we can sell the idea, okay?
but another thing too is when I started working after the band and I was like, oh great, I got to get a job again, kind of thing, like an actual job. It was so hard to find a job that paid anything other than dirt.
Yeah, so
that
you start to look at that money that you
Yeah.
get, and you're like,
Well, I started to remember that I could do other things without all this, and I could still, I could still survive. So I was like, well, let me try a few other things. And I tried other things, and I had a little bit of success early.
yeah.
And that
and
success.
the thing is that you can schedule your own time. Once you
Yeah.
realize that your time is yours, and
Yeah.
you decide when you're going to work for the money that you need to eat, and you don't have to be at work at 8 a.m. and stay for 8 hours a day every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a complete change
Not a
of
good work
perspective.
environment.
Yeah.
Okay, we've been on this one for a bit. I'm going to transition us to the next one. I don't really have anything to offer that one because my career has been the same since I got out of college. So I never went through a major career change. I intend to do so when I retire, and I've always had side businesses along the way, but that's not really a career change. So I don't have too much to offer that one, unfortunately. This is going to take a little different turn because this is not necessarily an event or series of events that occurs for, I would think, a majority of people's lives, at least in this country. But present company included in considering who we are and what little I do know about you guys, I'm assuming that you will be able to add something along the lines to this next transition here. And what I'm referring to is the life transitions and life-altering events that can occur as a result of a major psychedelic trip, basically. And how that may or may not have become afterwards and as the effect of a major life transition for you. When I say major, I mean typically is spoken of along the lines of, for me anyway, experienced ego death or just something an extremely profound trip.
Because of the okay.
As
Because of the
a
trip,
result
yeah.
of
Yeah, yeah.
ego death, because you can. So for those that don't know much about, have not dabbled with this, or have not experienced anything of these things on their own, you're not really going to know what we're referring to in this, or maybe you've never heard these terms at all. The ego, typically as defined for psychedelic purposes, is our construct, and you guys correct me if you disagree with this definition, but this is how I've come to look at it.
Just shut your mouth. No,
Stop now.
stop now. Forget it.
It's too deep. It's too spicy. Is for lack of a better definition, but this is how I personally define it, is our personal, how we fit into the construct of our environment around us is your ego. So how you understand that you fit into the world, however that may be, what you believe your surrounding environment to be, how you understand the things and the rule set in your world is one in part your ego, if you will. So you run into the wall over there, it's going to hurt, you're going to stop, because that is part of your construct. You know that the sky looks blue for whatever reason. You look at your hand and you see your skin color. That's visual construct around you and how you fit into your ego. You also know that you identify as a male or female, or maybe neither if you're a transitional or non-binary, right? We've talked about that before with episodes. It's all of these things that define your existence and how you fit into your surrounding and internal existence is your ego. Can we agree on this or no?
I don't know.
I don't.
I have never had all of that stripped from me, so I cannot.
Now, that's what
I cannot.
That's exactly what I'm
talk to
talking
that.
about. So, okay,
Yeah.
so maybe you can't add to this one, but for those people that have experienced ego death through a psychedelic trip, when you come out of this experience, pretty much everybody I've ever known, who, including myself, who you awaken definitely altered, and it's an experience that you will never forget, and it may be the most impactful experience in your life. Not necessarily meaning it's good, and not necessarily meaning it's amazingly helpful, but it will definitely rock your world. So, going from that as our kickoff point, who wants to start, or I'll start, one or the other. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, the greatest part of it is that you establish that you aren't your ego. I think the connectivity through everything, at least for me, took the pressure off a whole lot, because that meant that this little moment right here, though precious, isn't desperate. And so, like, holding
That's
on
good.
to things and white knuckling things is good for your energy anyway. And it just opens up this whole idea that, you think traffic is a problem. When you're driving.
These
Oh my
mind-
God, this traffic! And I'm thinking, what if the sun explodes?
Or what if we weren't here at all?
What if all these people just decided to get out of their cars?
Yep.
You know what I mean? There's
Is
so
that like one
much.
of those flash things?
Yeah,
Flash
there's so
mob.
much more to think about than just this namby-pamby little stuff. And taking psychedelics just withdraws you from this construct of this is life. You know, what we were talking about before. You meet a girl, you have some kids, you buy a house, go to college, all that stuff, right? That takes you out of that, because the real existence of everything at its core is like sharing love.
Yeah,
That's pretty much it.
vibrations and love, right? That's what.
That's pretty much it. That's everything that you need.
Yeah, it's funny too that a lot of, so for me, I came from no background in this at all, and no really build up or no preemptive, hey, this is what you're going to experience, man, or this is what you're going to think, or whatever. Kind of tried to keep myself.
It's
as
one of
clean
those
a slate.
things that you can't, like, well,
You really can't prepare
There
somebody
isn't.
for it.
Here's the handbook.
But
Go ahead. And at this stage, you should be sweating balls. It doesn't come like that.
And one of the things I found funny is that the end result still ended up kind of being along the same lines. I can definitely see where human beings commonly extract from that whole love and good vibration and a sense of connectivity to all things around you from that experience. And that's pretty freaking crazy that we are all, I don't know if I would say programmed, but we all seem to have that built in our brains somehow.
There's so
that-
much. It's like
the
an old
propaganda.
house. It's like an old house. You find a super old house, and I want the trim back to wood, and there's 47, 50 years of different layers of paint on there. Well, that first layer of paint was just you, like, being everything, and now you've got 47 layers of this is how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
On top of that, you
true.
just peel it all off. It's all gone. It's like pulling off your skin.
So, as a matter of it's funny you should mention that. That makes me think
I
of
have never done that either.
That makes me think of this documentary that I watched that had included interviews with and followed a few people over like the course of like 1 or 2 years or whatever. And they, all of these people, these people were either exposed to from one event, be it in a medical office or through friends or whatever, a heavy psychedelic experience. And then there was one guy in particular who every year he would take a trip to, I don't know what country it was, I can't remember, it was like in a rainforest or something, and do an ayahuasca trip. And it was a shaman-led ayahuasca trip with a group of people in the forest, deep in the jungle or whatever the hell it was. And he would do this on an annual basis. And he said that his point behind doing it, which I actually really liked and agreed with, was kind of like, just like you said, resetting, stripping off those layers of paint. Make sure not too many layers of paint get on
right?
there.
I'm starting to choke. It's getting hot in here.
Exactly. I'm going to tear off all this stuff and along with my clothes and run naked through the fucking forest.
Whatever you need.
Yeah.
Whatever you need in the jungle.
You know, and kind of reset your reality, reset your ego. And that is what was interesting to me too on top of that was, so for me it was like 1 or 2 real big heavy hitting experiences, and I haven't really felt a need to go back there so much.
Well, it's like you were satiated, on a cosmic level.
Yeah.
Because if it calls to you, you go to it.
Yeah.
Period. You know what I mean? Like recently, we've had a little run-in with DMT, and I felt like after that experience that I realized that I have a little bit more control over me. Just
Yeah.
me. You know what I mean? That's all you got.
Yeah, until the aliens start telling you crazy shit.
That's right.
Right. I don't know.
Go ahead, Thomas, what do you
I
think?
think obviously everybody has different experiences.
Sure.
One thing for me, like, I dealing with people in the world sometimes it's like, it creates anxiety. One of the things that I think it happened early for me in that mode of like doing a psychedelic was I felt like I was able to walk away from, for just a moment, to erase all the things that I had been pre-programmed. All the things that I had been growing up. This is the barriers. This is what you do. Your job's going to suck. All these things. And saw a different world, a different light. And it was almost, for me, it was like, I felt like I met another group of people. Like there are other beings out there who weren't living like this. And they were happy and creative and welcoming, and that did exist throughout all of this. And so coming back off of that, I felt like I was always like, it wasn't as much anxiety to me to deal with other people anymore. And there also was sort of a connection that like, there's a bigger amount of me out there that I do relate to, and that things are okay, you know?
Interesting. Let me add a different spin to that too, because my experience, my takeaway when I walked away for the very first time was just a fairly light mushroom trip, right? But it was enough to confirm some premonitions or predisposed thoughts I had on life in general because of that. But and the reason I offer this is because from telling people about this, over the years and explaining my take on it, people are like, "What the fuck? I never heard anybody look at it that way. That's kind of a weird way of, or they didn't like the way of looking at it, right?" So I've always felt that, believed in alternate dimensions, believed that we can't be the only life forms in there. There's got to be a quote unquote aliens or something out there, some other beings out there, in all of space and all of the universe, right? After that first experience, and again, like you said, being stripped away from all the stupid stuff that we worry about, one of the things that I walked away kind of being, what was a term I wrote down here, I was always suspicious of, but also I kind of walked away kind of feeling cheated or lied to as far as this existence that we have, this ego that was built by society, my parents, myself, throughout the course of my life up to that point. It was kind of like I felt cheated or like I said, or had been lied to, because when you see colors, when you taste colors and see sounds, and all of a sudden all of this input, again, this goes back to that whole concept of ego death, killing how you understand the world around you, removing it so that it's not necessarily there. I felt like bitter almost about it, because it was like, I've been lied to my entire life. Nobody told me, like you were talking about with the buying the house, or I should have done this younger, that kind of stuff, right? Nobody told me, because a lot of people don't know, that this existence isn't really as real as we think it is. And when you first experience it firsthand, and it can be as simple as the low level, because visual hallucinations in my mind are low level trips. That's like everybody gets visual hallucinations. That's the easy stuff. That's, oh, cool, look at this. But when you start digging deeper and deeper and deeper, the sensory input getting altered is usually your first level of a psychedelic trip, right? But when you start when you're the ball in the corner and you think that you've been away for 3 days, and all of a sudden people are like, dude, you've been laying there for like 20 minutes. You're like,
oh,
shit,
yeah.
How long was I gone? That kind of stuff. That's the real deeper stuff. But at that first level, when you start tasting colors and seeing wind or weird things like that, that really starts to mix up your understanding of how you thought you fit into this world and what this world was. So when I walked away from that experience, the transitionary period began with, this is fucked up, dude, this isn't fair. Why am I trapped like this? Why am I stuck with this construct that I have? And I feel cheated that I can't go to those places without, this altered chemical. Why don't I get to experience this in this form, as I am now? Why do I have to transition?
I mean, you can, but you'll be busy. Yeah. You will be busy.
You'd never get anything done in this world.
No,
Have like a $200 a day habit.
I don't know.
Yeah, so it really made me feel cheated. It made me feel bitter that we didn't get to
I've
experience
never heard
this.
anybody say that
That's
before.
exactly what I was talking about, man.
makes-
But I could understand it though, because maybe you are thinking like, yeah, I know everything there is to know.
Maybe
I got
that's
a
what
good
it was.
idea of how everything is, and then that comes and it sort of like knocks you right out of your body. Like
But see, I assumed-
Doctor Strange movie.
Yeah. Exactly.
You get pushed out, and you're like, what?
Oh, shit.
Okay.
And that's something internally I've fought with over the years is it because I was too damn sure of myself, and
Yes,
that's what it was.
That's
But-
exactly what it sounds like to me.
And that may be it too. But it felt like I was much more prepared and much more expectant or suspicious of this.
Yeah.
But being exposed to it, apparently because of the effect it had on me, I must not have been, right? But
Do you
yeah.
have a podcast on this?
Do I have a podcast on this?
Just that
You're
one
in it.
experience.
Seriously,
that
I
experience.
feel like that we could probably talk about that for an hour. Like
We will.
I've tried
I think-
shrooms,
well, first of all,
but
I
I
think-
haven't tried some of the stuff that you guys have. That DMT,
Yeah.
in particular, I've heard a couple things that
Or
it's like,
acid.
holy
Well,
shit!
Or acid. same
First
thing.
thing I'm going to say is I don't think we should talk with Ben about this further. I think it should be a psychiatrist.
I thought that's what we were.
Dude, I would have too much to say, and I'd be psychoanalyzing a psychiatrist.
I need
man.
another
I'd be
couch.
more fun with that.
But I
Another
think that's
couch.
great. I
Bring
mean,
that
it
back out.
literally it's a completely different experience that touches on some of the stuff,
So
some of
much-
the other
so
stuff that
much
we've already
more-
talked about,
Yeah.
just on a completely different level.
Yeah, but
way
it
more
is
different
a
than
major
us.
I mean, that is life-changing.
It is.
Things.
It is, yeah.
When it's done correctly.
I read the Walter Isaacs wrote the biography that was biggest, the most successful one about Steve Jobs. And I mean, how you feel about Steve Jobs, whatever. He was an amazing person, like Elon Musk. These are just amazing individuals, or Stephen Hawking, or whatever. There's lots of them, or Neil deGrasse Tyson. One of the things that Steve Jobs admitted in one of the interviews was that, and he said that he stated, I can't remember exact words, but it was something to the effect of, one of the most influential things I ever did in my life was acid. And
I've heard a lot of smart people say that.
yeah, I mean, after experience,
I
that
never heard
kind
any
of stuff,
stupid people say that.
well, yeah, that's the dangerous part. Is when you tell stories like that and people hear them, they think, "Wow, I want an amazing transit." You know, it doesn't. I want to experience that, or I want to gain that knowledge or experience. Unfortunately, it isn't for everyone. And I know people who have tripped many times and never come even close to experiencing ego
And
death.
he was
or-
a visionary.
Yes, I mean these are. It doesn't matter what they did or what. I mean, if you gave, I mean, I almost feel bad saying this, but if you had given Adolf Hitler acid, he might have, experienced some crazy shit because he was an intelligent person. He did bad things with his intelligence, but nevertheless, any hyper intelligent or high, high functioning person like that.
I think creative people for sure.
Yes, for sure.
Because being a creative person, a lot of times whether you want to admit to it or not, you're building a barrier of your creativity. Because you do certain things, or you do things.
You get
over,
locked
and
into.
You kind of get locked into
yeah,
like a.
especially if you're doing it for money.
But you're always pushing and looking for something creative. So I think when you do something like that, at least for me, it opened up a whole. Like I saw color different, I saw shape different. Everything I thought I knew I didn't.
Yep.
It gave me. It was
It
this
undo-
whole.
it does everything.
It undoes things, and it adds to it in levels that you're like, whoa. That does make sense. How easy was that? I just wasn't paying attention, or I don't know.
It didn't know where to look. That's
know
what
where
I
to
tell
look,
people.
yeah.
Is it didn't know where to look, and it's also kind of felt it's kind of like being shown that there is a multiverse. There is a place where
I believe that for sure.
Yeah, there is a place where protons are negative and electrons are positive. I mean, which is true, which we've already found on a scientific level, because that's the not dark matter, antimatter. So I mean, if there can exist there can exist an infinite number of other possibilities. So what's really trippy to think about, and maybe it's the weed talking, but the
Yeah, but you're not smoking.
yeah, but
I'm just smoking, listening to you.
what's even weirder to think about is that if you can get such self-confirmation that this altered places may exist, what else could there be, and how much bigger can this get, and how
Well, I think that
wrong
goes back
are
into
we?
someone like a Steve Jobs, and they see that and they're like, well, how much more? Wow, this was way more than I was considering was possible.
Yep.
It triggers like a little bump in your spark of imagination.
Can you imagine the Tesla that we would get if we could give Elon Musk acid?
Yeah, but we don't know that he hasn't tried it,
That's
right?
very,
and
very
the
true.
weird
I don't know
thing,
if it
You've seen
works
the
on
truck.
aliens.
yeah.
the weird thing is like Steve Jobs tried it, but there's no evidence that he necessarily did it all the time.
No.
You've done DMT, and you said that you didn't necessarily feel like you needed to do it again.
No, that was acid. I haven't
Oh.
done enough DMT to really get
Oh.
there on that, but I've had fun with it.
But
It's
it's an
really weird.
interesting thing. Is like, oh yeah, I tried. I had this great experience. I don't necessarily need to do it again.
Yeah. After my heavy acid trip, I've tried it a couple times after, and it was just kind of, I don't know, man. It just, I mean,
Wasn't
you still
the same?
It definitely was.
I
on
did
a-
it recreationally through the last 2 years of high school, all the way every week.
Wow. Yeah, I've not done that much.
It was great though. I mean, I felt like it made everything bearable, obviously. All the strings are just detached from everything.
Interesting. Yeah, I could definitely not function at all when I was. So that's the other thing too. Is what's difficult too when you get a lot of these drugs, depending on the drug, it is difficult to repeatedly dose yourself with a specific amount, because a lot of times, okay, you get a little tab. Well, how much was that? Let's say in the case of acid, you get a tab. How much was that tab saturated? How much was that liquid? What was the ratio?
there's no
used?
way to know.
You can't know. So let's say
How old was it?
how much UV light had
I've
it
been carrying this in my wallet for 47 weeks.
how much light was it exposed to? You really don't know the potency, so therefore you can't do repeatable doses. So what ended up happening to me is the dose I was given was fucking way more than I should have had, but we didn't know because since when I've tried it, I had what looked like equal. I mean, the tabs we tore off were
Even
the same number.
mushrooms, you're like, well, you weigh this much, you should have this many grams.
Yeah, but
You're
at
like,
least
it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, but at least that's true for the first time or whatever. But at least you can kind of gauge a little better with mushrooms because when they're growing from the spores, their potency is kind of the same. But that's like saying all weed potency is the same. It's not. So it's like unless you get
And even in a batch, it's
Yeah.
not,
anyway, we're getting
it's
too off topic on
unpredictable.
that.
That's pretty
the
off
whole
topic.
the whole idea of this is to throw caution to the wind, and just I am going to do this and accept what happens on the other end.
Yep.
Well, I think
And the
yeah.
amazing thing is, you find out that there was a wall there. No, it's just open sky, and there is no end.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a friend one time that said every time that they tried to do something in work and jobs and there was a no or something was a definite, they just didn't get what they were going to, that was the universe telling them there's a better thing coming, keep working. And that was like a positive spin on it. But I think with transitions in general in life, when you're young, you have no idea how to adjust to things. It's just learning because you're dealing with them. And, if you're lucky enough, like I said earlier, to grow up with people who have a good moral compass and have some work ethic, you're lucky. Because most people in the world don't have that to even see while they're young. So the best thing I could ever give anybody advice on transitions is just like, this is part of life. Someone can cut you off, but it's how you respond to it that makes your day change, and how you respond to other things. Somebody can yell and scream, "You're a terrible person." How you respond to it is how you affect it. For you, you have more control than you can possibly imagine. So just kind of relax and we'll learn
For
how
yourself,
to kind of
you
bob
have
and
the
weave.
most control.
The most control.
Yeah.
So every transition is going to be questionable. Some things are going to be easy to do. Buying a boat is going to be easy to do. Saving a relationship is not. So keeping in perspective that everything's going to happen. You just need to learn that you're smart enough and capable enough to survive these things. Just breathe.
Straight from the sweet, sweet life of Thomas. That's how we're ending this episode. That was beautiful, man. That was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We hope you enjoyed that and found that maybe even useful. See you next time. Show notes and other info can be found at our website, greatdistraction.com. The Great Distraction is listed in iTunes, and we greatly appreciate it when our listeners take the time to look us up and leave us a 5-star rating and review. That helps our show grow and motivates us to continue producing content. If you'd like to get in contact with us, you can do so using the email address, greatdistractionpodcast@gmail.com, or via our website. We're always interested in hearing any thoughts, comments, or questions from our listeners. Keeping up on the latest from us can be done in several different ways. You can add us to your favorite RSS feed tracker. The link is available on our website or in iTunes, or you can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Just search for Great Distraction, one word, no space. As always, thank you for listening, and thank you for all the support.